Hi everyone, welcome to the Jayda and Stitches show and welcome to a crochet quick fix. We've got a recap video today on our little Poinsettia applique. We made this during sort of a freehand moment on one of our recent live crochet alongs, and I've refined it just enough to turn it into something that you can actually wear. You don't need anything fancy like a brooch pin. All you need is a safety pin and some yarn, maybe a handful of beads, and you've got the cutest little pin that you can put on a hat or a scarf, maybe even a sweater. An ugly Christmas sweater, perhaps? So let's grab our hook, grab our yarn, we'll head on over to the craft table, and we'll stitch up one of these little cute poinsettias together. For today's version of our little poinsettia applique, I'm going to be using size 4 medium weight acrylic yarn. You do not need very much for this little applique, maybe 10 yards at max for both colors, so that would be 20 yards in total. If you want, you can add some beads to the center of your little applique, especially if you're using it as decoration for a hat. Maybe you're turning it into a brooch or something. If you're just going to be making it for adding to a dishcloth or a tea towel, then make it in cotton, and if you want to add a little bit of extra detailing in the center, you can use some yellow cotton yarn and make little French knots or just little stitches in the center. Doesn't have to be anything too special. You're going to want a pair of scissors, a yarn needle, a stitch marker might be handy. I'm using a 4.5mm hook. This is also known as a 7 or a G6 if you're using a 4.25mm hook. Either one is just fine for this project. If you're going to be adding beads, you might want a needle and thread to sew them on with. And if you want to turn it into a pin or a brooch or something, then you can use a proper brooch pin or a safety pin like I have here. And I'll show you how you can add that as well. Once you've got all that together, we can get started. In my original free-handed version of this little poinsettia flower, I did 7 petals and 7 leaves to correspond. But I think today I'm going to go with 8. 8 petals and 8 leaves. I just feel like that's a little bit better balanced, and I'm pretty sure we can fit it all into that center. So here we go. We're going to take our red yarn and start with the flower. We're going to begin with a slip knot on our hook. And we're going to chain 5. We're going to take that chain of 5 and turn it into a ring by slip stitching to join in the first chain, and that should fit right over the edge of your finger. Petals look like this. We're going to chain 5. We always skip the first chain from the hook. We slip stitch into the next chain, single crochet into the next chain, half double crochet into the next chain, and into that last chain you're going to slip stitch. This just creates a small little bottom to our little leaf, or our petal in this case, into the chained ring. So going right through it, you're going to slip stitch. So every single petal will be anchored in that chained ring with a slip stitch. Let's do another one together. Chain 5 to begin. Skip the first chain from the hook, slip stitch into the second chain, single crochet into the next chain, half double crochet into the next chain, and slip stitch into the last chain. So there's 4 little stitches in each petal, and when you get back to the chained ring, slip stitch right through it, and that anchors your petal. You can go ahead and make 6 more of those. Each one begins with a chain 5. You slip stitch into the second chain, single into the next chain, half double crochet into the next chain, and slip stitch into the last chain before you slip stitch all the way back into the ring that you made to begin. I'll let you work away at that, and I'll catch up with you back at the beginning. Once you have 8 little petals all worked into that chained ring, you can fasten off. You don't need very much tail. And then you can sort of pull out all of those little petals, making sure that you've got 8 all the way around. And you can take a moment and just weave in that short tail all around the back. And if you have any of that original little tail left over from the chained ring, make sure you weave that in too. Now that we've got our little poinsettia flower finished, we want to add some leaves. And we're going to do that by connecting them directly to the back of our flower. So let's grab our green yarn. We're going to start with a slip knot, just like we did for the flower. And we're going to join our yarn with a slip stitch under any one of these stitches. So where you connect your petal to the chained ring, you have a little slip stitch, and that's where these two little loops are from. You're going to slip your hook directly underneath any one of those and join with a slip stitch. So you're joining your yarn with a slip stitch to the back of your poinsettia that doesn't show through to the front. We are going to chain 6 to begin. So chaining 6 for the leaves, where we chained 5 for the petals. So one more chain for each leaf. Again, you always skip the first chain from the hook. We're going to slip stitch into the next chain, single crochet into the next chain, half double crochet into the next chain, double crochet into the second last chain, and into the very last chain you are going to single crochet. So your little leaf ends with a single crochet. Then you look back at the underside of your poinsettia. You look for the next little leaf or the next little petal along the center. Slip your hook underneath the next set of loops from that joining slip stitch and slip stitch to join your leaf to the back. So don't worry too much about that short tail. If you want to work over top of it, you can. Otherwise, you can weave it in later. Let's do another leaf together. From here, we're going to chain 6. Skip the first chain from the hook and slip stitch into the next chain. Single crochet into the next chain. Half double crochet into the next chain. Double crochet into the next chain, and you've got one chain left. You're going to single crochet into the last chain. So the base of our leaves is just a little bit wider than the base of our petals. Find the next slip stitched petal along the inside bottom of your little flower, and you can either try to grab that little short tail or just sort of put it to the side like this, and slip stitch to join. All right, you're going to go ahead and make 8 of these little leaves in total. Each one starts with a chain 6. Each one will be slightly bigger and wider than the little petals that sit above it. And you're going to make sure you're anchoring them into each one of these slip stitches that anchors your petals all the way around the underside of your poinsettia flower. Once you've finished your 8th petal, you're just going to slip stitch back underneath the same place that you joined your yarn with originally, slip stitch to join, and you can fasten off. If you are going to use this as an applique, leave a long tail of green for sewing, because you're going to want to sew each of your little petals, or I should say your green leaves, down to whatever it is you're using this on as an applique. Otherwise, you can just trim your yarn like you normally would, fasten off, and weave in all your tails. Once you've woven in all your little tails, you can take a moment to kind of go around your entire poinsettia and pull out those leaves, pull out the petals. Most of these little tiny bits of stitches will respond to your touch. You don't really have to block it, but if you find that they're not stiff enough, you can certainly take a moment to steam block it. You could add a little spray starch to this if you wanted to, and just sort of get it to sit the way you want it to look, especially if you're going to be adding this as an applique to something. But I'm turning mine into a little brooch today, so I think mine will stay pretty much where I put it, but like I said, you could always give it a little bit of a steam block or add a little bit of a spray starch to it when you do that. Now I'm going to add some beads to the middle just to kind of make it look a little bit more like an actual poinsettia. And mine's going to be worn, so I'm just going to anchor my sewing yarn, or my sewing thread I should say. I've got a length of thread and I doubled it up. And I've just got some 5mm round plastic beads here. These are the kind of beads you can find them in a lot of craft stores. I know Amazon carries them. If you are looking for them, you just have to search plastic round 5mm beads. And they come in multicolor packs. You could probably get them in packs of just solid colors too if you needed a whole lot of one color. And I'm just going to loosely sew. I'm not sure how many. I've got 5 beads here, but I'm going to try 3 to start. And I'm just going to sew them around the middle of the middle center. So I'm just running my needle underneath some bits of yarn, and I'm just going to sew them right around the middle, kind of cluster them in the center. Absolutely nothing fancy here. And if I get all 5, great. If I only get 3, fine. Maybe 4. We'll see what I can do. That's 3. I think I might be able to get all 5 in there. Now, after I've gone around and added them all to the center like that, I can also go through them all again, just sort of running my needle through each individual bead, kind of grabbing a little bit of yarn in between just to anchor it. And that way I know that they're in there pretty tightly and they're not going to go anywhere. And I'm just sort of gently pulling on my thread as I go. And once I'm done with that, I will just bring my needle to the back where I sort of anchored it in the back side. So back here, and I'll tie a little knot and I'll weave in my tail. There we go. So just a little tiny knot on the back. Always do it at least twice. Trying to make sure I don't poke myself. And I've had just enough slack on that. There we go. And then I will just put my needle underneath some of those stitches just to kind of pull a bit of that slack underneath the yarn. There we go. And then I will trim what's left. There we go. And now all we want to do is add a pin. You could add a magnet too to the back if you just wanted to make this something to kind of put on the fridge. That's kind of a cute little ornament idea too. Let's grab that safety pin and add a pin to the back of our little brooch. There are a few ways that you could add a pin to the back of your brooch. If you've got an actual brooch pin, you can just sew it in there. If you're using a big safety pin like me, you could actually cut a little circle of felt and glue the felt over top of the non-moving arm of your safety pin. So literally just glue it right over top of that, and that will kind of connect it in place. But if you don't have any felt handy, you probably do have your yarn needle and some yarn. So we are just going to gently sew it down to the underside of our little poinsettia. So I'm going to leave a little bit of tail out to the side, And I know that this is the arm I want to sew over, not the moving arm. So I've opened up my pin, and I'm going to be very careful as I do this. I don't want to poke myself. But basically all I want to do is run my needle around and around and around and around the non-moving arm of my safety pin. And I'm going to try and keep my little short tail out to the end here. There we go. And I'm going to try and keep it more or less in the middle as well. I'm going to work not too tight, not too loosely, kind of just picking up, anchoring my yarn underneath sort of the center stitches. And I'm going to go all the way across, making sure that I don't poke myself. Maybe do that one a couple times. And then I'm going to work my way all the way back. You can just knot those two ends of yarn together, weave in your tails back and forth a couple times underneath some existing stitches, and then just trim whatever's left. And that anchors your little safety pin to the back of your brooch, and you can wear it just like you would a regular brooch. And that's a fun, quick way to decorate a hat or a scarf or an ugly Christmas sweater or even your outdoor coat. And that is a simple poinsettia. We hope you enjoyed making this little poinsettia applique or pin along with us today, and we will see you soon here on the Jayda InStitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, and have an awesome week. Bye everyone!
Hi everyone, this is Mama in Stitches. Thank you for watching. Here are a few other videos you might enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe, and you can also click the like button and the bell. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.